Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte and welcome back to Situ, Operation Wallacea's new series of online lectures. This week we're welcoming Éadin O'Mahony and she's going to be telling us all about her research into whales and how you can use snot for their conservation. So being a biologist isn't always glamorous. So I'm going to hand over to Éadin. Thanks for coming to watch and come back and view the rest of our series.
Hi, and thank you for tuning into my Operation Wallacea ex situ lecture. My name is Éadin O'Mahony and I want to talk to you today about my master's research, which is a marine mammal focused genetics project working in British Columbia and Canada, but also a little bit about what it means to be an early career scientist and some of those opportunities that are available globally to gain access to fieldwork experience or generally research experience in different labs and that sort of thing. So before I delve into the details of my master's project, I wanted to touch a little bit on some of the experiences that I've been lucky enough to have that gave me a taste of what it means to be a field biologist, a conservation biologist, and really allowed me to focus my interests to bring me to a point where I'm pursuing a master's and hopefully a PhD in the future. So as you can see from this slide here, there's been projects all over the world, but where I gained my first fieldwork experience was in South Africa in the Tanda Game Reserve with Operation Wallacea. I went out there the summer after my first year of my undergraduate degree at the University College London, UCL, where I was studying biodiversity and conservation. And we went out and we were working in Tanda Game Reserve, particularly focused on calculating the carrying capacity for elephants and rhino within this fenced reserve. So looking at the levels of browsing as well as things like bird diversity. So very interesting experience and really my first taste of what it means to be in the field, up early, up late, working hard in challenging conditions. And I really recognized for me that was something that just lit a flame, and I was really inspired to just keep pursuing fieldwork opportunities and how best we can design the research that we want to do to maximize the benefit of the field work and the field time that we have, but also maximize the benefit and the connection with the local communities where we work. And that's something that's very, very important to me, is that although as conservation biologists, we may travel around the world, we may go to these remote, faraway places, but to always think about the local impact that you might have on the place where you're carrying out your work. And that impact extends beyond the conservation of flora and fauna and connects to the local communities there. So who are the people? How can they benefit from the work that's going on? And how can they actually be brought into the research that you are hoping to do there? How can it be a more collaborative effort and therefore a more wholesome outcome, because you're bringing various knowledge platforms together. You're bringing science and potentially indigenous knowledge together to work towards a common goal. And that's something that can be very powerful in terms of succeeding in a conservation objective. So my second Operation Wallacea stint was in the Amazon rainforest, working with the Sani Isla in Ecuador. I was there as a vegetation scientist, working with an amazing team of other scientists focused predominantly on biodiversity assessments. So really looking at the levels of endemic species in the Sani territory, which is where we were working. And again, like I mentioned, we were working very, very closely with the local community, essentially working hand in hand. One of the roles that I had on the team was mapping the levels of diversity within the tree species. And really and truly what stood out to me the most was the science coming together with the traditional knowledge of the Sani, and how that could be of benefit to both science and that community in terms of protecting what is Amazon pristine rainforest and requires increased levels of protection. The other work that I've done, you may have picked up on an Irish accent by now. I am Irish, I am in Ireland right now, and I work and have worked on various projects here at home particularly looking at replanting native forest. Ireland used to be almost completely forested, particularly with ancient oak forests, and now unfortunately our native woodland count is at less than about 2% of the country, and something that we're focusing on more and more is trying to replant those native forests, rewild some spaces, and get back to a stage where we're able to protect the biodiversity that is left here, and hopefully come to a point where we're able to rejuvenate some of those ecosystems that have been decimated over time. And the other project is the Source to Sea project, where I was the academic writer for a freshwater conservation project that was focused on the River Lee, which is the river system that flows through my home city of Cork, and trying to engage local communities again in what it means to protect a freshwater river system. Why is it important? Why is it important to us as people? Why is it important to our heritage, our history? But also, why is it important from a, again, biodiversity and scientific perspective? So those are all very, very interesting projects, and some of those are still ongoing. But my master's project is actually focused in British Columbia and Canada. So just to give you an idea of where I'm talking about in the world, British Columbia on the west coast of Canada, and a large chunk of that coastline is known as the Great Bear Rainforest, which again is, it's temperate rainforest, again high levels of biodiversity, and beautiful but highly important and nutritious waters for many species of marine mammal that use that coast as a feeding ground. So the organization that I'm working with, the NGO, is called the North Coast Cetacean Society, or BC Whales for short. And BC Whales has been working in Gitga'at First Nation territory back since 2001. Working hand in hand with this local community. And as you can see here in the slide, the Finn Island Research Station is circled in red if you can spot it. It is a small research station overlooking Squally Channel, which is an area of high abundance of humpback whales, fin whales, and we also regularly see orca using these fjord systems actually. So this is a fjord system here that you're looking at. So I started working in Gitga'at territory with BC Whales back in 2017. For my undergraduate dissertation, I modelled the habitat use of mothers and calves, humpback whale mothers and calves, looking at how they use the habitat and what way we can use that understanding to help develop protection measures and conservation measures in relation to the vessel traffic through the area, and so forth. Now, my involvement with BC Whales has since morphed into a deeper project, a bigger project, focused more heavily on population genetics of humpbacks, as well as looking at body morphology, so the actual body size of both humpbacks and fin whales. And this is something that is ongoing right now for my master's, and we're hoping to grow into a larger scale project moving forward. So as I said, this genetics project and this body morphology project, we wanted to take an approach that was the least invasive approach possible. So marine mammals, both humpbacks and fin whales, and the orca too, and other marine mammal species that use this coast, they're very vocal species. And every time you switch on the engine of another boat, you're introducing increased levels of noise to that environment. So one of the things that we wanted to do while developing this project was try to minimize the amount of impact that this research project would have on those whales. Because if the goal of this project is conservation, then really in our research methods we should try to be as least invasive as possible, introducing as the least number of stressors into that environment for these whales. So the approach we decided to take was to fly drones. And the way that this fjord system works is because you have very deep waters very close to shore, it means that these whales are coming quite close to shore. So we were actually able to do a large amount of the work from land, as opposed to having to go out in a research vessel. Now, we did also go out in a research vessel in order to expand the geographical area over which we can carry out the research, but we tried to do as much as we could from land. So the main focus of the project was flying drones in order to collect a blow sample from humpback whales. So as a humpback will come up to take a breath, it exhales as it reaches the surface, and with a decrease in pressure, this blow, or I guess this whale snot, will the water vapor will compress, liquefy, and we're able to fly through with the drone and with little petri dishes attached and collect a sample of that. Now, that whale snot is full of incredible information. So this particular project is focused on genetics, but there are teams around the world that are looking at blow as a source of hormone analyses of these whales. So looking at the stress hormone cortisol, looking at pregnancy hormones, and really getting a deeper understanding of the physiology and the hormonal responses of these whales, and how that can be measured non-invasively through something like collecting whale snot. There are teams looking at the bacterial colonies, the bacteria, the viruses. But like I said, we were focused on the genetic material that can be extracted and sequenced from these blow samples. So what does it look like when you see a humpback with a drone? What you're looking at here is a humpback whale mum, over on the right hand side probably, most likely, with its calf coming up to take a breath just to its left hand side there. And the third whale in this image is what's generally known as an escort. So you'll have this mother-calf pair with the escort, sometimes resting with them, sometimes feeding together, sometimes traveling together. And this is from probably about a 20-meter height, looking down at these whales. But when you take a blow sample, of course, you need to have your timing, your piloting skills. You need to be able to preempt when that whale will come up for a breath, especially if you're going for an individual based sample. You need to make sure that your blow sample that you're collecting doesn't get contaminated by perhaps its calf that's also coming up for a breath, or that escort that's nearby. So swooping down a little bit closer to that whale, what you can see here is its blowhole just at the surface of the water, which is a homologous character to nostrils in other mammals. It comes up, it takes a breath, the blow will shoot out from its blowhole, and you can see here just the sunlight catching the blow and forming a rainbow, and that is essentially what you're flying through with the drone in order to get that sample. And with these blow samples, you're then able to ask some really ecologically important questions. So some of the things that we want to try to understand about these whales in particular is, where actually are these whales that we have been seeing coming and feeding in Gitga'at territory for years, and having these feeding groups side by side with some of those same individuals feeding together? Where do they come from? So are they migrating from Hawaii, or do we even have some whales that are coming up north from Mexico? And that's one of those things that you can find out genetically. The other thing we'd like to look at is some of those relatedness patterns that might exist across some of these groups. So like I said, with a non-invasively collected blow sample, you are opening up the door to asking some very interesting and very important ecological questions. The importance of being non-invasive, of course, means that when you're also applying your field methods, you're constantly monitoring the response of the animals that you're working with. So as you're flying the drone, you're able to, in real time, you're seeing what the drone is seeing. And so we were very careful to constantly monitor any kind of a behavioral response from that individual, from that whale. And as soon as any kind of a response would be detected, we would fly the drone away from that whale, land it, and just leave the scene. Thankfully, we saw very, very few behavioral responses from these whales, particularly because we chose to work with a smaller drone, which meant that it was a bit quieter, smaller in size, And like I said, we tried to do a lot of this from land, so without having to add that extra stressor of a research vessel coming into the vicinity of that whale. So some of the other focuses of this research project was to measure the whale's body size from the air as the whales are swimming beneath you. So what you're looking at here is actually a group of 3 fin whales, the second largest animal on Earth, absolutely magnificent to see, and to see their sheer size. But also from this image you can tell that they are a lot more streamlined than, for example, the humpbacks, which you would have seen a moment ago. So built for speed, absolutely. And flying over them with a drone, again, this is at maybe a 30-meter height, so you're up very high looking down at these animals below you. And the way that we measure the actual body size of these whales is using a LiDAR laser. So it's an extra little GPS tracker and LiDAR laser attached to the base of the drone, which pulses as it hits the surface of the water. It's giving a very accurate measurement of height above the sea surface. And using some basic trigonometry with the video files, with the imagery of those whales beneath you, you're then able to go ahead and calculate the size of those whales. Now, again, research teams around the world developing incredible software that's available that you can apply to then go ahead and take the measurements. And the beauty of that is that instead of spending your time developing this software, you can utilize tools that have been kindly made available by other teams to then go ahead and ask those ecological questions that you're trying to ask. So one of the things that we are looking for example, is pregnancy. We've seen a severe decline in the number of humpback whale calves, for example. So if we were able to detect pregnancy from the air, that certainly is something that could help us understand some of those population trends that might be occurring without us really understanding what's going on. It helps to answer some of those questions. So as you can see here, this is a fin whale again. You can just see some of those measurements that we're able to take with the software that's available. So you're looking at overall body length, the size of its fluke or its tail, splitting its body weight into segments so that you can get a better understanding of its body surface area, for example, and its volume. And then ideally you're able to track some of those measurements through time to get a better understanding of how these whales recover when they're on the feeding grounds, as they're feeding, and are there changes through time? So from season to season, are we beginning to see a change between individuals and overall population trends? So really important to ask, of course, always when you're designing a research project going forward, is ask yourself why this research is important. Is there a practical element to it? Is it advancing our understanding of this species, of this ecosystem? And in particular for this project, we are trying to better understand the impacts that increasing anthropogenic pressures have on these species. So in the long run, of course, one of those major factors would be climate change, but more on a localized and a short-term scale is an increase in ambient noise and an increase in vessel traffic, and therefore ship strike risk. So the collision of a ship with a whale in these waters. So trying to prepare for a point where you can really assess the impact that vessels are having on whales. And of course, in light of the fact that both of these species, the humpbacks and the fin whales, were hunted to almost the point of extinction, and being able to continuously monitor their recovery over time is of huge importance. But what's also important is that when a species reaches a point of, of having recovered back to historical abundance levels, is continuing to monitor and understand that species in the face of novel stressors. Like I said, climate change, increased ship traffic, entanglement, that sort of thing. And that's where this drone work will play a major role. Like I said, that calf decline is coming into play for those humpbacks who have made almost miraculous recovery with the amounts of conservation efforts around the world that have been carried out over the last decades. but now we're seeing a decline in calves. So making sure that we understand what is really going on with that population, and making sure that our conservation efforts are really aligned with what that species needs at that time. So in the area where we're working, we're preparing for a point where a liquefied natural gas tanker route will begin to pass through the area. So here in the slide you can see the little Finn Island research station overlooking Squally Channel that is heavily used by humpback fin whales orca. And out here, Otter Pass, as you can see in this red dotted line, is following the track of where those tankers will go, starting in proposed to start in 2023. And the amount of vessel traffic in this area will increase, it's being calculated, will increase about tenfold. So we are trying to reach a point where we're in the best position possible to monitor the impact that this tanker route will have on these marine mammals, and therefore on the ecosystem as a whole also. Because of course, conserving one species generally will have cascading and positive impacts on the rest of that ecosystem and on the other species that is shared within that realm. So by focusing specifically on marine mammals and specifically on whales, we're able to monitor their habitat use and utilize that understanding for example, designating protected areas. And that then has impacts on the various other species found there. So just to give you a little idea of what these small islands on the coast of British Columbia look like from the air, again, a drone image here in the middle. You know, eagles. Down the left hand corner is a Kermode bear or spirit bear, which is the white black bear that is rarely seen, but its home is in the Great Bear Rainforest. And some of those other marine species like the sea anemones there in the bottom right hand corner. So bearing in mind again that conservation, you may be focused on one particular species your entire career, if you will, but often that will have cascading effects outwards, a rippling effect outwards of benefit to more than just the species you're focused on. So then to finish up, I just wanted to touch very briefly on what life is like when you do very remote fieldwork for extended periods of time. Like I said, I spent 6 months out here at the Finn Island Research Station. It is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in the world, but it's also a place where we have no cell signal, no internet access. We're a team of 2 to maximum 6 people at a time, so very small team. It's an uninhabited island, as in uninhabited by other humans, and it's only accessible by our research vessel, and that vessel you have to hike through the forest most of the time in order to even access the vessel in the first place. So very remote, very isolated, and certainly can be a challenging way of life if it is something that you don't thrive off of. I spent 6 consecutive months out there and honestly felt very at peace with myself. We were doing very important and dedicated work, working hard, working by the rhythm of the tides, the weather, the whales, and that is something that really worked well for me, was that I became in tune with the natural rhythms around me, which, having grown up in a city, is something that I didn't intrinsically have, and is something that I had to learn over time, and really something that I felt was very key to the success of a field season. So I think if I had to give a piece of advice for somebody thinking of studying conservation biology or biology in general, would be to find a way to experience fieldwork, volunteer if you can. There are plenty of incredible organizations all around the world doing very important conservation research, and a lot of them offer volunteer programs. If there is a way to do it, of course, Operation Wallacea is a prime example of opportunities to get out into the field. It gives you an early taste of what that means, and if that is something that is suited to you, and you may very well be like me and absolutely thrive in that environment, and start counting down the days till you get to go back out there after this pandemic ends. So with that, I will say thank you so much for your attention. I know we will have a live Q&A session, so I look forward to any questions you may have about the work that we are doing and about any other questions you may have in general. And with that, I'll just say thank you. I'll leave you with this picture of an interesting interaction between an orca and a humpback whale that was captured by the founder of BC Whales, Janie Ray. And also leave you with the handles for both BC Wales' social media and my own, in case you want to get a bit more insight into some of the other work that we do. With that, thank you so much, and speak to you soon.